Good morning, folks. Welcome to the second Community Planning Partnership Board of 2026. I think there's a few faces we might not all be familiar with, so we might have to have a wee introduction around the table, if that's okay. But I'll just go through the sort of formalities for now. So could I remind board members that we're being live streamed, and that's to allow for public access, and also that the meeting's being recorded and will be available for subsequent viewing online. I think we'll probably get to this in the introductions, but I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Sue Parry, who's one of our new Community Councillor representatives, and also our new Police Scotland Chief Superintendent, Claire Douglas. Stephen, could I ask you to give us the position about attendance? Thank you.
Apologies from Kim Dams, no substitute. Jane Morrison-Ross and Russell Griggs from SOS, but Rob Davidson's here to represent SOS. Councillor Andrew Giusti, Julie White, but Mark Cook's online, and Valerie White's in the room representing the NHS. And also Jim Ferguson, who is our other new Community Council representative, and Helen Kerrin. Dawn Roberts will be joining us in the room at 10:30, and Alex Salam will also join online at 10:30. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. So if it's okay, could we maybe do a whistle-stop introduction too, just for those who are maybe not familiar with everyone. So my name's Stephen Thompson. I'm leader of Dumfries and Galloway Council.
My name's Claire Dobson. I am the new Divisional Commander for V Division.
Morning all, Alan Webb, Chief Executive, 3rd Sector, Dumfries and Galloway.
Councillor John Campbell, I'm Chair of West Strands.
Rob Davidson, South of Scotland Enterprise.
Morning, I'm Ralph Thorpe. I'm Head of Resilient Communities Policy at Scottish Government and part of the Place Director support team.
Claire Renton, Police Director for D&G from Scottish Government.
Hello, Douglas Dixon, Principal and Chief Executive of Dumfries and Galloway College.
I'm Valerie White, I'm the Director of Public Health at NHS Dumfries and Galloway.
I'm Jo Shearer, I'm the Chair of the 3rd Sector, Dumfries and Galloway.
I'm Susan Parry, I'm the new Community Council representative at Heath Hall.
Stephen Jack, I'm a Lifelong Learning Manager, and I provide the community planning executive support. Thank you.
Angela Nisbet, Chair of the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, and I'm here to observe before we present later on today.
Okay. And we have a few attendees online, so I think the first one on my screen is Derek.
Good morning, folks. I'm Derek Heaton. I'm the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Local Senior Officer for Dumfries and Galloway.
Thanks, Derek. And then Mark.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Cook. I'm the Chair of NHS Dumfries and Galloway. I must apologise. I would always wish to be there in person, but being in Glasgow last night, the closure of Central Station has meant I couldn't get down.
An acceptable excuse, I think. Andrea?
Morning everyone. I'm Andrea Hall. I'm Area Manager with Skills Development Scotland. I also tried to be there in person today and had to turn back because of the snow at Greymare's Tail. So, online, I'm afraid.
Also an acceptable excuse. I noticed we've got a JB, CW and GM, so I think that's our elected member colleagues, if I'm correct.
Yes, correct, Stephen. Morning. Councillor Gail McGregor. I'm juggling meetings this morning, which is why I'm not there in person, because I've got to go on to other ones as well.
Thank you. And Caroline?
Morning, Caroline Wilson, elected member. I'm at home today with a sick child, unfortunately, sorry.
And finally, JB.
It's Jennifer Burns, and I help with the Secretariat for the meeting. Okay.
Thank you very much. I think the only person who's not made an introduction is our IT team. Just for, I mean, why? But we have Abby Burns supporting us, so that's grand. Okay, thank you everybody. As you might have suspected, due to a meeting clash this morning, we're going to have to take the business brief item first, after the minute and action log items. The workshop element which I think is probably the best part of the meeting, so we should give as much attention to that as possible. We'll start at 10:45 to ensure all the board members are able to participate. So with that, we can go to the draft minute. Are we happy to approve? Are we happy that it's an accurate record? Nods in the room, so thank you. And then we would just go straight to the community plan and action log. So Stephen, Jack, can you please take us through this?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just a few things to highlight. At number 2, we do have the locality plan update in the business brief item, so we'll provide an update then along with discussions. We had the police planning partnership present to the leadership team last week, so we can cover some of the comments that came out of that one as well. Let's see. We have the draft Healthy Weight Action Plan on the agenda at the next item. Work is ongoing through the subgroup to develop a logic model approach to help support the next end of year LOIP report. It is going to be a major piece of work, so it won't be in time for this year. It'll be for the 26-27 report. And Isabel McKnight from Third Sector is providing some great support around that, and we're meeting regularly to try and push that forward. And just at the end, it was raised at the last meeting about a keenness to receive the address and depopulation information and use that as part of a workshop. So we've booked that in for the 19th of June meeting. So the first part of that board meeting will be our end of year performance, and then we'll have a separate session on address and depopulation. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from members of the board? No, okay, thank you. So that takes us on then to business brief. So again, Stephen, if you would be able to take us through the main items which require our consideration or agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll just take each item one by one. The first one is the population health, and sorry, my error, put child healthy weight, it should just be healthy weight. And for those that were here last month, we had a very good workshop around healthy weight and scoping out potential partner actions to help make a difference going forward. So Valerie has kindly prepared an overview report and also a draft action plan for consideration. So if I hand over to Valerie, thank you.
Yes, thanks very much, Stephen. And just for colleagues who weren't at that session, the Population Health Framework, which is the Scottish Government and COSLA agreed document, their second priority is a healthy weight environment. And we had a discussion at last Community Planning Partnership on the challenges that we have in relation to that, not just in D&G, but also across Scotland. But we were trying to really focus on those local levers, the things that actually have an evidence to say that if we do these things, these can help to make a difference in Dumfries and Galloway, really creating an environment that kind of helps support healthier choices for people and makes things easier. So it was quite a lively and it was a really good discussion that we had, and what I've tried to do with the colleagues who also facilitated the conversation was just outline some areas of action, some which are kind of already going that we can kind of tie into this, but also some new areas of work. And these are all mapped against those 7 local levers. You'll see that there's some areas of the local levers that we thought, right, that's just not for now, because we're conscious that if we try and do everything, we end up not achieving what we want to do. So we focused it on some key areas, and I have been in conversation with colleagues from Public Health Scotland earlier this week, and they are keen to support us as well in terms of some of the areas of work that are outlined there. So I think probably one of the kind of key things that I'd also just want to highlight is the importance of continued focus on the physical activity strategy and the work across partners to embed that as well, which we have put as an action too. So also, I think probably one of the things just to kind of think about is in terms of the kind of Good Food Nation work. There's kind of a lot of work that is going on in relation to that. A lot of good work that's been led by the Sustainable Food Partnership. The Council and NHS have obviously got the requirements of the Good Food Nation plan, but we want that to be a kind of regional plan and a kind of partnership plan. So one of the actions that is in there is about actually part of that, like that scoping out and actually what needs to happen to coordinate some of the activity in relation to that. So that might mean that we're looking at a new partnership, but I think one of the things that really came across is people were worried that there could be a lack of coordination in relation to the action. So that would be something that that piece of work would look to do, so that we make sure all the work in relation to the Good Food Nation does join up. So the actions are there. We have identified the partners for them. So really it's just to seek the approval. We did discuss this at the Community Planning Senior Leadership Team. There was support for it there. What I would propose is that we take this away, we get on and that we do the work, and that we come back and would report to the Community Planning Partnership Board probably at the end of the year. Community Planning Senior Leadership Team can keep an eye on this work as we move forward. So I'm happy to take any kind of comments, questions or reflections, Chair.
Thank you. So hopefully members will have in their pack under appendix, it's got the action plan there, and it does identify, as Valerie was saying, the actions, the leads, the intended impact and the intended outcomes. So does anybody have any comments or questions on that? I did notice it does explain in the narrative was a sort of greyed out section, which is sort of still to be determined in terms of the awaiting the outcome of eating well evaluation discussions, etc. So these are just sort of time bound, as opposed to they're in the plan, but just to be determined at a later date.
Yeah, that's correct, and the work in relation to school meals and uptake in there is very much been taken forward through the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership. So again, let's not duplicate or reinvent any wheels. So and that will be reported through that route as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from anybody? No, I don't see any. So I think with that, I can hopefully be able to say that we're agreeing, or we've considered and we're agreeing the Child Healthy Weight Action Plan as detailed in Appendix 1. Okay, so then we've then got the Community Transport Business Case attached to Appendix 2. So who do we have to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So as a bit of background for some colleagues, Community Planning Partners, NHS, Dumfries and Galloway, Dumfries and Galloway Council and South of Scotland Enterprise invested in exploratory work to develop a community transport business case back in 2024. It was originally intended that we would have a 3 years worth of discovery, given the extent of community engagement that is needed to build the business case. However, I'm pleased, first of all, to report to Board that we're bringing the business case 12 months earlier than originally planned, which was always helpful. There are more than 60 pages, I think, in your pack explaining the business case, the work that's been undertaken, the proposed benefits and some of the challenges, I guess, in developing community transport. But the business plan was brought forward to Community Planning Senior Leadership Team last week and received full endorsement for partners. I understand the outstanding actions are just some of the discoveries around the finance. I think there was an absolute intention to support the plan at SLT and some practical work being taken underway. I think there's some follow-up meetings happening in the next couple of weeks. Important to say that we have been coordinating community transport in Dumfries and Galloway for quite some time, originally through a more recent public social partnership and then a new strategic development group which is currently hosted by Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway. The intention in the business plan in the long term is to establish a social enterprise type organisation as a standalone in its own right. However, we recognise in the current climate that that's quite risky, and therefore the proposal is that Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway will continue to house the strategic development of community transport until such time as the entity itself can be sustainable and stand on its own 2 feet. This does mean that TSDG has taken on the wider responsibilities around funding and investment, but backed by partners and supported by the investment that we think we need to get it off the ground. So I'm hoping it will be welcomed by board members, but it's here for further endorsement, I suppose, by Community Planning Board, and very happy to take any questions, Chair. Thanks.
Valerie.
Yeah, it was just to say it was really well supported at the community plan and senior leadership team. This is a kind of like innovative community-based project and working with our communities, and it just ticked all the boxes: community wealth building, and fixing one of the real key challenges in our region. And I think we really felt this is a great example of actually, if we can pull some resources, what we can actually achieve. So it was just to support what Alan's saying. It was really felt to be, this could be a really exciting and innovative way forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Valerie. John Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, 60 pages, it was some reading, I must admit. One of the things that sort of caught my eye was there's mention of the 3 community transport. You've got Wigtonshire, Galloway and Annandale. And everything seems to be based on 3, but you're expecting to increase that. Have you had any sort of other communities that sort of come forward with an aspect of joining?
Thanks for that. Yes, there are, through the discovery work, there are 15 established organisations and communities who operate some kind of transport. The 3 mentioned in the report are probably the most established and largest, and because they've had a significant role in the strategic development group, they've been able to help shape the work. But we have identified and have had support, I have to say, for this proposal from all 15 community organisations who operate transport, and we think there are likely more, but people might not identify themselves as a community transport operator, but might be a community group operating some kind of transport. Yeah. So there's a wider interest from 15 and likely probably 20 to 30 in total of kind of community transport based facilities or operations in some shape or form. So we do have support for that, and the intention is to involve them all as much or as little as they want to in the development.
That's actually quite encouraging, so I'm quite happy to support this.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Alan. And just on this similar point before we bring Claire in, so obviously a lot of our region is a periphery with other local authority areas who some operate their own community transport, and sometimes there's connectivity between our region and the likes of East Ayrshire, where I think they've got community transport up in the 9cc Community Council area. So I'm just wondering, are there opportunities for that sort of synergy where we're connecting communities across local authority boundaries as well as within?
Yes, so there has been some discovery work done in other areas in Scotland about the models particularly connected to us would be South Ayrshire and South Lanarkshire and Borders, where we've already had some of those conversations. There absolutely is an opportunity, I think, to align some of that work, and particularly on, as you said, the cross-border transport, which is a small but reasonably significant part of the current community transport operations, particularly in relation to health, for example, which crosses borders. So there is an opportunity to do that. I think the important thing to recognise is there are a variety of models. What both operators and partners were firm about is holding on to the value and purpose of community transport. So there is not an appetite to create a big single transport operator entity. The essence of community transport, which is driven from community need and community purpose as its first priority, was hugely important. So we will absolutely work on some cross-border connectivity, but the regional body is designed to build a kind of sustainable network, if you like, but not take away the community element of transport operators. So in short, yes, there is, but that's the kind of background to where the conversations of why we've not gone with a let's create one big organisation, for example.
That's helpful, thank you. Claire.
Hi, thanks. Obviously a great piece of work. So I just wanted to sort of draw attention to the Scottish Government published the Child Poverty Plan yesterday, about hope and futures for young people. But I would draw attention to the CPP about the range of interventions and support that's coming out. Now, part of that is around transport alongside skills and childcare, but both from the RTP side, but the local employability partnership side, there's certainly empowerment and encouragement about that transport agenda, recognising that is a key barrier, particularly to poverty. So I just want to draw attention to that, because this feels like something that might align nicely with some of those opportunities that are coming out, and I would encourage the partners to look at it collectively about what are the opportunities to maximise this. We're super excited about it because it really feels like we're starting to join up, which feels very much what you're doing locally as well.
Thanks, Claire. I think one of the, and it's touched on, I think, in the paper, but one of the benefits potential of having third sector Dumfries and Galloway as a kind of early host of it is that we're involved in all of those conversations. So there's probably very few partnerships in the region that we're not involved in, and transport comes up in all of them. So we do have active conversations, and there are some examples in here, particularly around employability in transport. We're also working closely with colleagues in Swedish Trans who are connected into the tackling poverty transport theme as well. So thank you for raising it, absolutely. But as I said, I think it's one of the benefits of having us as the host is we're able to make those early connections, and that helps build the structure that we need going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Well, it sounds very positive, and I think it's captured, I suppose, that network of interests across the region. So thanks, Alan. I think we're effectively being asked to consider and endorse the business case, and it does, I think, have a specific ask about, is it page 65 in the pack, about extending the funding commitment, which I think partners are very happy to do, and also underwriting to de-risk going forward, which is contained in the report. So with that knowledge in front of us, are we happy to consider and endorse the business case? Okay, nods around the room. Thank you very much. That takes us then on to the progress updates for the locality plan, and that's in Appendix 3. So is that over to you, Stephen?
Okay, thank you, Chair. For newer members to the board today, we do have a statutory requirement to develop a locality plan or plans as part of the Community Empowerment Act. So we went on a bit of a journey last year through that to look at what other areas we're doing. Look at information from Public Health Scotland, who did localised data profiles, and from that we identified the areas, and this is the key difference in terms of these plans. They need to specifically address inequalities in areas, so it's looking at the hardest to reach communities or the most affected by that. So we decided, the board decided that Kirkconnell Keller Home would be the first one, and there had been a bit of early engagement in there linked to other projects, so the team felt that that would be a good place to start as a bit of a pilot, and the board agreed that we would only focus on one at this point in time and try and get that right, rather than biting off too much and trying to do too many when we have got limited resources. That partners have commented on that. So that was agreed last October time. So we asked all lead officers. We've reviewed the plan. We've done it more as an action plan, and as you can see, we've put lead officers in who will coordinate the various actions across, and it's very, very wide-ranging. The format for the plan was that it was going to link to the 6 themes of the poverty and inequality strategy, which made sense given the focus on inequalities, and the actions were scoped out in partnership with the communities themselves. So I think in terms of our first update, I think it's very, very encouraging across the different themes. Some actions were in traction anyway, but you can see progress such as in this month, actually, there's going to be a new range of digital classes planned in Upper Nithsdale. There has been weekly employability support sessions provided at Hillview Leisure Centre. And as you can see in the period between October and December, 375 individuals have been engaged or benefited from those, along with targeted support for parent and carers. There's also been free use of the multi-use games area allowed during holiday periods to ensure young people have got some exercise and sports space. The minibus trips, which happen, in fact, the frequency is increased of the minibus trips to Cumnock and Auchinleck to provide more affordable shopping opportunities, and those have been provided. Those are proven to be very, very popular. The Upper Nithsdale Food Share project, again, is really, really important, supported by the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, and you can see some of the impact quotes from individuals that are benefiting from those in there as well. Through the Winter Warmth campaign, 553 leaflets were distributed across all those households to raise awareness and making sure people are pointed in the right direction for support. Mill Hill Practice has increased the number of GP sessions in order to reduce travel to Sanquhar, which again is another positive, along with a new oral health officer being appointed in January with a dedicated remit for Upper Nithsdale. There's a number of transport-related projects which are being supported by Swestrands, including maintaining the 221 bus service was protected, which was one of the key priorities. And there's also community-led housing project, which is on target linked to Borderlands and expected investment shortly, hopefully. So that's just a snapshot of the projects. Contact has been made with all lead officers. There's a few projects that haven't quite started yet, and that's just due to scheduling capacity, but will take place shortly. So the next stage is we're planning to do a further update at the June board meeting, which is, as I mentioned, is our performance meeting, and we're going to try and bring that to life with some testimonies, some voices from the community in terms of the impact that the plans had and what that means for them. So I'm just going to pause there and I'll take any questions, and then I've got another update on the Place Planning Partnership that we can cover as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. I mean, it just so happened I was at Borderlands on behalf of Dumfries and Galloway the other day, and we did get approval on the, I think it's 620,000 for the Kirkconnell Kellohome Development Trust for the housing project. So that element is, that money's there, so that's a sort of be a reassuring thing for the community. As it happens, there was also a positive outcome for Dumfries and Galloway College. For the Net Zero Centre, but that's a sort of separate item, but it's still good news. So in terms of the actual document itself, I did notice we've got the red, amber, green or RAG status for some of the options. There was one red, so I did want to ask about that in terms of page 109, which was the NHS, I think it was to do with transport. So there's maybe an opportunity here to look to get an update available about how that could be progressed. This was citizens will be able to access health services without the need for travel. Valerie, you look ready.
Yeah, no, that was a clerical error in terms of how we assigned that. So my colleague Gareth Marr from the Health and Social Care Leadership, he, the Chief Officer of the Integration Joint Board, he is picking that up, and he's actually arranging to go up to Kirkconnell and Kellohome in the next month or so to actually kind of look at what the opportunities and things are in that region in relation to that. So yeah, that will progress, Stephen. So. Okay.
It's just on that, can we make sure that's captured so that the report reflects that change of status, if you like? Okay, sorry, Valerie, on you go.
Yeah, I suppose it was just to say that I think that like we talked when we had the place session at community planning how complex the landscape is in relation to, there's the Borderlands plans, there's the CPP need the locality plans, and then there's the local place plans as well. So there's something with the locality plans about hitting that sweet spot that's not duplicating the Borderlands and not duplicating the place plans. And I think there's quite a lot of green in there. There's quite a lot of focus being put on this, and it does seem to have had an impact. And I think that was one of the things that the board were really quite keen to understand. So you know, let's make sure we deliver on the plan that we've got. So I think it's certainly we made a commitment to the community to deliver on this. So I think it's really good to see that there has been that progress, and certainly at the community plan and senior leadership team we've been quite clear that we want to see this moving ahead. We want to keep a focus on it because we want to make sure that we deliver on that. Thanks, Stephen.
No, really welcome, Valerie, because I think the partnership board sometimes is accused of making plans and all the rest of it, but it's impacts and outcomes, and I think as long as we've got that focus, which is like the plan can be great, but as long as we're the ones driving towards the impacts and outcomes, and that's the measure of how successful we'll be as a partnership. Sorry, Claire first and then Alan.
Hi, thank you. It's great to see this, and just wanted to sort of reinforce, obviously we're keen to be working with the Scottish Government in terms of adding to that simplicity and not layering complexity, and working closely with local employability leads around a CivTech challenge, of which I know the trials are getting based at Kellohome Hub. So that's around working between Dumfries and Galloway and Glasgow around, it's really around MSK and about health conditions and about being much more proactive and empowering people, that if you've got I always say MSK because like the whole name is beyond my vocabulary at this point in time. But if you've got back issues and you've got, you know, we're seeing that a lot in terms of people's ill health and not being able to work. So we've got a really proactive integrated CivTech Challenge. Now, CivTech Challenge is a government-funded programme which is really about sprints and using technology to find solutions for these things and empowering individuals. So Lynn was giving us an update on that, about how it's going, but Kellohome is really focused on that. So I think it's a way of us adding value without adding more complexity or business, and capitalising on the Kellohome Hub, which has been really good for us. So I just wanted to just put that on everybody's radar as well.
Thanks, Claire. I wasn't aware of that, so good to know. Alan?
Thanks, Chair. I was actually originally going to ask the question, and Valerie did respond to some of it, which is around the conversation last year around as much as possible aligning all the locality plans, and we talked about some of the challenges or place plans, and some of the challenges of communities spending a lot of time developing place plans and then getting to the stage where there's no investment to see them through, so they've kind of done all the discovery work. I'm curious, just perhaps it's through SLT, or maybe Stephen's about to touch on it in the place plan and partnership update, around the extent to which the community is involved here and is able in itself to align its place plans with locality plans. The only risk being, and we did talk about it, that this becomes a really service delivery plan. So this is all bodies coming to deliver services and do things that are important, and the extent to which that potentially bumps up against things that communities want to do on their own, and therefore this plan becomes a bit of an enabler to those plans. So how are we joining some of that up, I suppose, given we've given a focus on one area? Is it seen at SLT? Is that what we expect from place planning partnership? I'm looking at Stephen and Valerie, thanks.
I think this is this really tricky landscape of there's certain plans that look at certain things, and I think the board officers that helped develop and support this really did look at those different elements and what are the gaps that are not in these plans, and what supports those local place plans as well. So I think that I would give you that reassurance that there's not duplication. They're like, what's the bits that we can add value to that you are as communities are concerned about, and that's what's in this one. I think the local place plans is something I think Stephen will kind of cover when we give the place planning update. So we are navigating a complex space in relation to all these plans and how they all join up and align and don't duplicate each other. But I do think that we've done quite well in this one in terms of, right, well, what are they asking the community in terms of us as those community planning partners, not us telling you what we need to do, but actually what do you need from us, because that's the space where we can deliver in, and there'll be different spaces where the community will want to deliver in as well. Thanks.
So Stephen, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Thanks, Chair. So for those members that were at the board meeting last year where Stuart Hamilton, who's the current chair of the Place Planning Partnership, and if you remember there was a map which overlaid all the different place initiatives, and it was huge. I think the approach for the Kirkconnell Kellerholm one has been good, because there had been that Borderlands Place Plan early engagement around that. So, you know, it was easy to kind of work around that and see what the gaps were in terms of inequalities. The update that we got was, you know, I think there's around about 42, if I remember, local place plans. Not fully, I think there's been between 12 and 14 have been formally agreed, but there's another 30 that are in development, which is huge. So, you know, it is a case of the areas that we've identified, we need to be really, really careful and make sure we're not treading on the toes of something that's already happening, like Valerie said. And, you know, Stuart did comment that, you know, this isn't easy. It is complicated to kind of work that round, and particularly there's 3 different statutory statuses around these plans as well, and you need to respect that, but we're trying to combine as best we can. Where the Place Planning Partnership landed, because they were mindful, and there was an ask to go back and consider that once we've started to make meaningful progress on Kirkconnell Kellerholm, where would the next area be out of the list that we identified. And for those that remember, the areas would link back to data zones as well. So I think there was a couple of data zones in Stranraer, I think there was a couple in Annan, there's a couple in Dumfries, etc. And it obviously makes sense not to have a plan for each data zone and just combine. So it's one for Stranraer, one from Dumfries, one for Annan, for example. So the Place Planning Partnership had a discussion around which area they would like to tackle next, and linked to similar reasons for the Kirkconnell Kellerholm one, the preference of the partnership was to look at the Stranraer one next, and then followed by the Annan one, and take stock of the time, resources, etc. that would be required to make meaningful progress around those. So that's what the leadership team heard last Friday, and we said we would raise it today just to see what board members felt, if you felt that that was a logical next step and we could start making progress against those. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. I mean, I think what's coming through, or what I took from the report in front of us in terms of the appendix was, even when you get to responsible partners, there's much more of a mix. You know, obviously sometimes the council will be a lead responsible partner, sometimes it's NHS, often it's in partnership with the likes of Food Share, Kirkconnell Kellerholm Development Trust, the Community Council, third sector organisations. So there's kind of more of a, it's not just the same old organisations, if you like. There seems to be much more of a blend of projects that can be delivered in partnership, which seems to be a bit more encouraging in that respect, but still that caution about, are we treading on something that's already happening? Are we working in conflict with each other? So I think as long as we're mindful of it, I guess, I think we're clear that we're thinking about that. But there does seem to be a recognition that it's going to take a number of different partners working together, depending on the project, to deliver the outcomes we're seeking. So I think we're going in the right direction, I suppose, but happy to take any other views on that at the moment.
I suppose it's also just about ensuring that we don't focus on Kellerholm and the question which Alan was kind of alluding to, which is about sustainability and community growth, as opposed to, this is our first place plan, so we're going to put all our services and supports there. Oh, now it's Stranraer, so we're now going to focus all our services and supports in Stranraer, and we lose sight of the sustainability and the development and the ongoing support of the services we're providing in Kellerholm, the services we should always have been providing. We just have got a better focus on it, or the additionality, and it's been really explicit about that, because the last thing we want is the place plans to be only active when they are the focus of people's attention. As a community planning partnership board, it's, should this be happening all the time? You know, are we going to give you free use of the mugger? But no, Stranraer, free use of the mugger to you. You guys are going to have to start paying. We need to be really clear about not falling over ourselves, I think, when it comes to that sort of thing, so that we grow the sense of plan. What did we learn from this place plan before we start the Stranraer one? What worked, what didn't work? What are we scared about dropping? If we moved out, would that completely collapse again? You know, so I think there's some messages about, before we move on to Stranraer, which obviously I'd be delighted to hear, but that what have we learned from it? What's the sustainability, and do we have the capacity to keep doing this and allowing the community to take control when they can, because that's where the sustainability lies.
No, that's a good point, and it was just before you come in, Valerie, but I think there is something about this offers us a chance to better align and target our resources in places, using places as the model of framing it, if you like, because we've, I suppose, collectively been trying to find ways to transform how we work, and this might be an opportunity to do that. I mean, just in the broadest sense, but very much in line with what you've just been saying. So, Valerie.
Thanks. I think that was some of the discussion, Joe, that we had at the community planning senior leadership team is, you know, the people, you know, from the NHS that might support some of these developments in terms of like primary care, how there's only probably one set of those people. So how do we make sure that actually if we start doing place plans and those, how we manage that delivery? So there was, I think colleagues were slightly reflective of, well, what might that mean in terms of some of these things. I think hopefully as well, maybe what the locality plans are embedding is maybe a different way of thinking and a different way of engaging, so that kind of really kind of like that embedding of that place-based approach, because we talk about it, but what does that actually, you know, what does that actually mean in practice? So so I think there was that thoughtfulness. I think there's a real ambition to go ahead though from the place planning partnership. I would say they're really keen to take these forward. But I think one of the things that I heard really clearly from the board last time is we have a lot of plans. Let's make sure we're able to deliver on the plans before we start looking at any other plans. And I think what we were given at SLT was, well, there's a reassurance that there's been focus and that we have made some delivery on that. I think there might be a further conversation to say, well, actually, what would development of a place plan in another area look like, and what resources would we need to do it, and that might be helpful before we just dive into it. That was certainly my reflection, but I do know, Stephen, that there was quite a lot of enthusiasm from the place planning partnership to take them forward.
Did you want to come in, Susan?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that as a community councillor, the within the community councils, we've got we're usually the lead on local police plans, and I was involved in developing the local police plan for Heath Hall, and I think this locality plan is a lot more in depth. It's a lot more substantial than what you'll get in a local police plan, and it seems to be that it's getting implemented at a higher level than what a local police plan would be implemented. So I think it's the crossover and avoiding the crossover, but I can't see any community councils that are going to turn around and say to you, oh, I don't want you to be doing that, because actually what this one here is showing is that you're actually developing above what a local police plan would expect.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of community councils, because there's a few in my ward, for example, have developed and had some adopted, Moffat, for example, but there is that element of place planning so far as it fits with the planning side. And this is back to the complexity that was mentioned earlier about the different levels of plans that are all geographically linked, but actually have completely different purposes in a sense. But the aspirational side of a place plan might be, well, what do we as a community want to have and develop? And that's where it becomes a project in terms of establishing, well, who can take that forward and how? Because it's not necessarily going to be a local authority or the NHS, but it might be a community group or an aspiration or a private partnership or whatever. So, and that's the next challenge. But I think Kirkconnell and Kellohome are fortunate in this regard, as in they're the first to get this level of attention. And I suppose it does come back to that sustainability point about, okay, if we do this here, how do we then adjust our service delivery models to take into account the place model of delivery led by communities who have come forward in partnership with others to develop a complex plan like this. So, yeah, I suppose other community councils look on with envy at this point. But yeah, okay, sorry, Valerie.
Yeah, I suppose just want to emphasise this was done based on inequalities. So it was very much looking at the data and where are those areas in our region that would most benefit from this. And I'm sure every community would like to, but I think, you know, the legislative requirement of community planning is tackling inequality, and that's why there's been that area of focus. I think what I'm hearing is I think there's maybe a conversation that we need to have with Kirkconnell and Killahome and the ward office and the individually, because actually we're going to get to a point where we've completed this plan, because we're not far from that. But actually, how do we make that sustainable? How do the community feel that they've got the connections, that they know how to engage and how to get further action? Because that would be the trick, is it? Because otherwise what we're going to end up with, what's the next plan? And is that what we want to achieve, or actually is what we want to achieve we work in a different way with a community so that things are taken forward as and when they evolve, rather than waiting for a plan? So there's maybe a bit of that. The what next after the plan is maybe something that we need to kind of explore a bit further, so that actually we're really truly creating those kind of place-based connections and approaches.
Thanks, Valerie. Douglas?
I think it's related to the point that Valerie is making. It's the you know, and I'm coming at it from the kind of education perspective. You know, so we're mentioned in the plan for digital, and we have, you know, we've got a range of digital resources that, you know, anyone can access. And I guess it's the cross-cutting element of this, of education, you know, because the Sankar Academies and DYW are mentioned, and actually going across place plans, all of those elements are going to be relevant. And I guess it's don't want to spread resources thin, but there is a clear education offer that probably would fit into most place plans. You know, for instance, Stranraer, in their initial piece, they identified that there wasn't sufficient higher education in Stranraer, but when it then came down to, you know, the actual choices that would go into the plan, it didn't feature. However, we actually had read that, because it was one of the early kind of documents. We read it, and actually we're putting together a proposal to create a higher education hub within Stranraer, within our campus, using other partners. So there is a bit, I think, in terms of these cross-cutting bits that, you know, I welcome the opportunity, but also I'm conscious, you know, it's how do we make this happen in a very logical, you know, because I think Valerie's point around NHS, we're going to find, you know, that there's, you know, and we just need to listen to our news, there's a constant, you know, theme around, you know, NHS and education impacting on communities, and it's just to get best value for the communities I'm coming at it from, but also to make sure that, you know, there's not an expectation which is then not met.
Okay, so we're in danger of drifting into an interesting conversation. But we can pick that up, I think. But in terms of this piece of business, I think obviously we've considered the progress update. So the locality plan is detailed, and I think, Stephen, I don't know if there's a few points that we might want to take forward from the back of this.
Thank you. So what I've picked up from the discussion, the board seemed to be in support of Stranraer potentially being the next one, followed by Annan, that we should take stock of the learning points from the Kirkconnell Killahome experience in terms of what's worked well and why did it work well, and what was behind that, you know, what hasn't worked so well, and what would be changed in the future, and do some follow-up work with the community themselves, which is going to lead into the performance update in June in any case. How do we keep kind of pace going with this plan, given it is a 5-year plan, whilst then moving resources to starting a new one, and what does that mean? How will that look? Ensuring consideration of established local place plans, which would be part of the process anyway, but just to reinforce that, to make sure we're not duplicating and it's adding value. And how do we make this, you know, sustainable, particularly considering resources and capacity, and being mindful of that and realistic in terms of our future plans.
No, that's helpful. So if members are content with that, we can move on then. So we're now going to look at endorsing the final draft of the Place Director Community Planning Partnership Charter as detailed. So we've got Appendix 4. And is this over to you, Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So board members already considered the draft version of this at the last meeting. So there's been a couple of tweaks since then, and Scottish Government are basically asking us, and actually the deadline is today, which is quite timely. So we're just being asked to now fully endorse the final version. And Claire obviously offered at the last meeting just in terms of the opportunities and linkages to that. But perhaps you want to add some comment, Claire?
Just to say thank you, because everybody's been really open to work with us and give us sort of honest and constructive feedback, which we really welcome. I think it's really good as it sort of captures it in a one page. And I think it's really important that we do have that structure to start on this journey in terms of figuring out what's right for Dumfries and Galloway. You know, obviously Ralph's come down today and we want to take a really proactive approach in utilising this opportunity to build relationships, build understanding and just see what we can do to help. You know, since the last meeting, we have gone back and spoke to colleagues about the Food Nation in terms of making sure your voices are heard and that colleagues are aware of that, and we took back in terms of the rural impact assessments as well. So I just want to reassure you that we are proactive in working with our colleagues. We know transport is really important for the region, and working with our transport colleagues to understand how we can help and support in that, and also making sure that we've got visibility. So we facilitated our Director General coming down to the college for economy to have a good conversation, which has been really useful. And then we were supported on the Director General for Education and Justice to come down and have a really good conversation with Douglas and the team, which was hugely helpful. And then we will follow up that. So sometimes items are also not visible, but I think it's really important for us to make them visible and then to understand why that's important and why it connects with your aspirations, but also just to reassure that we are listening and we are willing for feedback and for understanding. So hopefully this sets out in a really helpful way what our intention is, but it's not meant to be restrictive, it's meant to facilitate us building on what you need for your region. There's obviously a lot in there, and I know we're committing to 2 days a week. So sometimes when I see the list, I'm wondering how this is, how we're going to make this work. But we will make it work that's right for you. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else I want to say beyond that. But thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Any comments? Or are we happy to endorse what we've got in front of us now that, I mean, we've had a chance to look at it and feedback in. So there it is. Are we happy to endorse the final draft? Okay, great stuff. Thanks, everybody. I think at this point we've juggled the agenda about a little bit, so is it okay if we take a few minutes just to sort out the workshop part? And maybe, what would you suggest, Stephen? How long will it take us to get organised?
Maybe if we just have a 5-minute break and that'll allow a changeover to happen. I know Mark's coming in to present along with Angela. So, okay.
That's great. Thanks, folks. We'll just cease for now. Thank you. Okay, folks, we're just going to make a sort of bring this to an order, I think, and then make a crack on. So we've now got our workshop session, which will be led by Service Manager for Young People, Mark Malloy, and Chair of the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, Angela Nisbet. Board members have received some pre-information in advance, hopefully, so we can look forward to discussions. So over to Mark and Angela.
Thanks, Chair. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for making the time this morning for the workshop that will hopefully help us on our journey to developing the successor strategy for tackling poverty and inequalities. And this morning, I'm certainly not going to introduce everyone in the room at the back, but I just want to make a point that we've got 3 volunteers from the Tackling Poverty reference group who have had lived experience of poverty at some point in the past. So I really want to welcome Pamela, Keith and Eric with us today, and I know that they're looking forward to contributing to the discussion, and I think it was a really important thing for us as we develop this strategy that we're doing it with the right intent from the start, from ensuring that we've got people with lived experience as part of that. So I just wanted to welcome the 3 of them this morning. In terms of the strategy going ahead, it was yesterday we realised when we were doing a bit of pre-work that I don't think anyone currently on the CPP board was actually here at the point when the last strategy was developed, which just shows the turnover that's there. But I think that what we have at the moment is a strategy coming to an end at the end of December this year, and we, through the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, got an approach that we've agreed around how we're going to take forward the development of the strategy. But it was really important for us to have this early engagement with members of the board to ensure that we had a high level and strategic direction provided for how we move forward. So today we're going to hear from myself and Angela at the start, putting the context in this, and then we'll break into the 3 groups that Angela will cover later, which will allow hopefully for rich discussion, and then we'll take that back to the partnership. So I think today we're just looking, for each organisation, each individual to contribute based on what your remit is, and what and keeping focused on what's best for our communities and individuals experiencing poverty and inequalities in Dumfries and Galloway. And if we keep that at the centre of our discussions as we go ahead today and then over the next 9 months worth of engagement prior to us coming back to this board in December with our new strategy, hopefully that will keep us grounded and allow us to make sure that we're doing something that's beneficial for the communities and individuals in D&G. So I'll just hand over now to Angela, who will take us through the majority of the presentation, and then the slides we'll share it again after the meeting as well, that's there. And also, sorry, it was remiss of me to, because Angela is our new chair of the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership after a rigorous recruitment process that involved our colleagues in the third sector, NHS and Council, and we were delighted to get somebody of Angela's calibre to take on the position and help direct the work as we go forward. So welcome to Angela for that, and I'll hand over to Angela to take us through the presentation.
Thanks, Mark. No pressure there at all in that introduction, is there? Good morning, all, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here meeting you all today. And I really found it useful sitting at the beginning part of the meeting. Really good to see those golden threads of collaboration across all the bodies here today, and how those tentacles reach out to the communities and the people within those communities that really need our help and support. So that was really, really useful. So thank you for your efforts in that. Today's about strategic leadership, and the current strategy, as Mark mentions, it comes to an end in 2026. It was a 5-year strategy, and we're starting now to ensure there's no gap in that direction or the momentum that's been built up over the last 5 years. And what we're asking you as CPP members is to set the ambition and the principles that's going to guide the efforts and the work over the next 5 years. We won't go into operational detail today, you'll be pleased to hear. Instead, we're going to focus on where we must aim and how we're going to work together to actually get there. So we've structured today's workshop to make the very best use of your insight, your experience, and of course that all-important strategic influence as well. Together we're going to reflect on where we are now. We'll hear from lived experience from the members of the Tackling Poverty Reference Group and shape the priorities and the principles that's going to help guide that drafting of the new strategy. By the end of the workshop, we will have a shared understanding, I hope, of the pressures people are facing, and we will take a brief look back at what we've learned from the current strategy and hear directly from that reference group. We're going to use breakout groups, there'll be 3 of them, to discuss and agree the priority themes, the principles for partnership working, and what success is going to look like, but importantly, what it's going to feel like for the people that we're trying to support. To be really clear, what the ask of you is today is to set the overall ambition for the strategy, identify 2 to 4, maybe even 5 strategic themes, agree the guiding principles of how we're going to work together, and surface the top enablers and the barriers to that delivery. But importantly as well, identify those measurements of success. We will ask you to confirm your organisation's contribution during the development, the evidence stage, the engagement, and where possible, help us with the resources to do that. But everything we capture today will feed directly into the drafting of that new strategy and the governance process we'll have with that later on in the year. Before we dive in, I think it's quite important that we remind ourselves of what makes Dumfries and Galloway distinct. Our rurality and transport, that shapes our access to jobs, services and childcare. Digital exclusion, I heard you talking about that this morning. It's real, and more services are moving online. We've got higher food and fuel costs, and that's really hitting household budgets. We have an ageing population, and that's increasing, and that's adding demand on health and care. And we have low wage and seasonal work, and that drives income insecurity. These realities are why a place-based, which you've been talking about this morning, strategy and CPP leadership is essential to addressing that poverty and inequality in a meaningfully and locally grounded way. And with that context in mind, we'll now reflect on what's worked and what we've learned from the current strategy. And then we'll move on into lived experience in our breakouts. So learning from the current strategy, that's going to help inform our future priorities. Having that collective understanding of the achievements and the pressures will help us guide targeted, responsive and next strategy planning. What we do know that the current strategy was developed pre-COVID, before Ukraine war and before the cost of living crisis. So these priorities determined and shaped the delivery programmes, with the emphasis being on poverty. But what the strategy has done, and I'm going to read from a sheet of paper, a whole list of stuff. Please bear with me. It's strengthened multi-agency collaborations across the region, a bit like what we've seen here today. It's delivered clear practical benefits across the region. It's increased inclusive access to support for everybody who needs it in our area. And let's take another few moments just to consider some of the outcomes, this roll call. Child poverty, our First Minister's priority. Child poverty in Dumfries and Galloway is now at its lowest level since records began in 2015. 1,169 fewer kids are living in poverty in our region, and that takes Dumfries and Galloway from 8th position down to 15th across the local authority tables. We're providing 516 additional kids with free school meals. We've increased positive employability, getting families back into work from 38 up to 90. That's a 137% increase. We've distributed 340,000 information leaflets, signposting people to help for food, for fuel, and for cost of living and debt advice. For direct cash support, an incredible 2.17 million of unclaimed child trust funds have been unlocked for 1,450 young people in Dumfries and Galloway at a critical stage in their lives as they move out. But it's people who are working are also in poverty, let's not forget that. Some 251,000 well-being pounds support has went to 92 working families. That's families working within our public sector alone. We delivered 166 affordable homes in 1 year, and we've delivered 480,000 of fuel debt has been written off, helping families stay warm, avoid crisis, and keep the lights on. We've had 595 reconnections, and 2,000 emergency vouchers have been issued to families. Food security. We now have full mapping of all food providers and food banks across the region to increase that visibility and accessibility. And that includes 26 new food providers that's been added to the third sector map. We've literally given away thousands and thousands of free school uniforms, warm winter clothing items, health and mobility aids, baby and toddler clothing and equipment. Much of that would have been put in landfill. So there's another thread there, net zero. And for our third sector organisations who are hard working, delivering all that support, we've secured alone £255,000 in funding applications just from the wind farms, and then a further £16,800 in participatory budgeting to community-led projects. Now that's a sobering list of need, but it's also a significant list of support that's been enabled as a result of that strategy and all of these sectors coming together in a collaborative way. And I think you should celebrate that. I think we should all celebrate that. I'll stop at clapping hands, but I think it's something worth celebrating. That's been done on your watch. But of course, there's more to do. From the data we issued out, and part of your pre-meeting pack supplied by DAGCAS, households in Dumfries and Galloway continue to face significant cost pressures, and that's despite the fluctuations in inflation. We have a rise in demand for crisis and financial support, and the new strategy, we have increasing precarity among working households and sustained pressure on the services across the region. The new strategy is going to need to focus on income security, cost of living mitigation, access to services, and critically energy support, especially in light of a new war. We are very grateful to have a budget to recommission a new regional deprivation and poverty report, and we will be updating that pre-COVID version, and that will help inform the priorities as we go. Have I missed a bit, Mark? Okay, so we'll now move to the I think I've missed. Yeah, so I think I've lost the slide, sorry. I was doing so well. I think we'll now move to the CPP reflections exercise. And what I'd ask you to do is to reflect on the sector and the community changes since 2020-21, and what you've seen has been the impact on poverty from all our work. Can I ask you all in the room just to take a couple of moments, talk to your neighbour, and just have a wee reflection on anything that you've actually seen happening in your area. I will come back to you and ask you for some examples. And those online, if you would just have a wee think, and I'll ask for some of you to come across and give us any examples you've seen. Okay, feel free. Okay, everybody, has that been useful? Yeah. See, they don't want to stop now, do they? Yeah.
Right. I've been
Has that been
compelled to
used?
pull everybody back in, so
Yeah.
we're going to get a bit of structure here. So this whole exercise is to just get your heads geared up to be thinking in the right way, I think. So I think we've started on that
was the
journey.
intent, yeah. Okay, so hopefully that was useful though for yourselves, just to reflect on, what's the pressures here, but what is the actions taken. Anybody like to give us some examples of what you came across in the room?
I can kick off with
Go on.
an easy one maybe, but so I suppose it was really helpful to hear you outline all the mitigations and actions and direct impacts that have been had during the course of the current strategy. But I think there's a clear difference between the mitigations always chasing the cause, if you like, and where I think more and more we realise we're at the mercy of things completely out with our control to do with things that impact on the cost of energy in all its forms, whether that's electricity, oil, whatever else, and the impact that has on a rural area like ours directly and immediately. And no matter, you know, that inflation could be, we have no control over that whatsoever. So it's maybe about how do we proof ourselves against the resilience to deal with such changes that we can't control.
Yeah, I think Rob and I kind of on the same sort of lines. You know, it all boils down to energy. You know, the heating oil, for example, is doubled in a rural area. That's got a huge effect. Not everybody's got gas, so that's one of the things. But when the price of oil goes up, it affects everything. It affects food, it affects building materials. So you might have had a budget for, say, 100 houses that you were going to build, and then all of a sudden you have to scale that back down to 50 houses. So, you know, everything has a knock-on effect. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Rob. But
No, okay, very quickly. No, I think the list was fantastic, and I recognise a lot of that from previous shows. We remember it being developed, and I'm certain that that's helped a lot of folk. But it feels to an extent like we're running to standstill because of those other pressures that John was outlining that are really difficult to get to grips with. And I think the priorities that you were outlining, the suggestions we want to be thinking about, feel like they're very relevant to those big challenges that are going to have potentially quite a profound effect on the region, and thinking through what we can do collectively to try and help people get through them.
Yeah, thanks. A couple of reflections that we talked about, I suppose, when I first joined CPP, and I think this was one of my areas around tackling poverty and inequalities that I took quite a while to get my head around, because the discussions it looked much more piecemeal, I suppose, than necessarily it is today. And I was concerned that what we were doing was trying to manage the plan rather than understand the impact. I think what's really different now is across all of our partnership conversations, this is a thread across all of them, and there's a genuine interest to do the right thing and recognise that even though we said we would do something 3 years ago, times have changed, it's got really more difficult, we need to do something else, which I think is interesting. I suppose another reflection from me from the third sector, and you mentioned some of the investment that's gone there, which is really welcome, but I know there is a huge drive from colleagues across the community and voluntary sector to work much better together in terms of responding to what's happening in people's lives. One aspect that I think we shouldn't forget, though, is that even though we're putting investment into the sector, more of the sector's resources in Dumfries and Galloway are going to mitigate some of the challenges rather than, so lots of organisations are moving away from what would be their traditional core work to actually mitigate harms that are happening in our communities. So more money is one of the answer, but more of that money is being used for those mitigation spaces as well. So a reflection. So recognise the successes that you've outlined, which is hugely important to recognise, but I agree with others, it feels that we need to do something. We need to take a much bigger step to try and even catch up with overcoming some of those challenges. Thanks.
Thanks. So we had talked about kind of there's obviously increased service demand on health and social care, and some of that's demographic driven. But when you think that 40% of actually what determines your health, it comes from your kind of socio-economic factors that influence that, then that's a big driver. And unfortunately, the latest data in terms of healthy life expectancy is actually showing a decrease in healthy life expectancy. So it's now about 59 in terms of when people can expect to live in good health. So we've seen a slight decrease in that for both men and women. That decrease has been seen in Scotland as well. So the indicators are probably like not going, because health is driven by poverty, but can also lead to people being in poverty as well. So you've got that kind of cyclical kind of nature of it. So that's a tech project that you talked about in terms of how do we support people with their health to enable them to get back to work is also important as well. That's me, thanks.
Yeah, from a college perspective, I guess the aspect that we've come after is the access element, that we're conscious that if you can access education and follow a pathway and then lead into higher education, it ultimately leads to higher value jobs. So that our focus has been to, working through predominantly the lab, to be able to create that opportunity for first step and then be able to support and continue. But there's no doubt, about it. If we look at it, measures of poverty are often difficult, and in terms of education, we are asked by the Funding Council to measure against SIMD 10, which has been a fairly stable 9% of the college's intake. But we know what that means in our rural environment. It's not a good measure. But there is no doubt about it in terms of the students we're getting. We've been seeing increased need to support to stay in education through additional support. We've been fortunate that there is a foundation which does do that locally, which is great. Because money is for everyone is tight, but for a student is even tighter. And obviously we've supplied through we've got food banks as well. So I guess what we've been trying to do is create the access, but also improve retention, so that then there is a clear output, and that is the hard work of where we've been at.
Hi, is there any reflections online you'd like to share? Anyone? Alex?
Good morning, thank you. I suppose it would be remiss of me not to share some of what I presented to the Anti-Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee last week, in terms of what we are doing as an RSL in the region. And because it's very fresh in my memory, I have some high-level information that I'd like to share with members in that regard. So I've been in the region, it'll be 2 years come May, so wasn't here for the beginning of this particular strategy. But certainly information that we shared with the subcommittee last week is impacts in the region across 24-25 that I'd like to share. So I think partnership is what's really stark in terms of being able to deliver on some of our objectives. We have really strong partnerships for programmes supporting financial wellbeing. And just very quickly, because I'm conscious of time, we have My Great Start initiative, which is supporting 191 new tenants in the region with advice on debt, benefits, budgeting, etc. Starter packs helping people into their homes. 155 tenants benefited from that in the last reporting year. Home comforts, providing high quality pre-loved household items to free struggling households. 1,170 households benefited from that, and that was 30 tonnes of household items diverted from landfill. So I thought that was a really stark statistic to share with members. In terms of financial wellbeing, and this is being delivered from the foundation, Wheatley Foundation arm of our organisation, over 2,500 instances of direct support to help reduce financial stress. Financial wellbeing team that was introduced just last year, and that helps with providing specialist advice around bills, budgets and benefits. And we've seen a real struggle around providing any tangible advice with fuel costs, just as Stephen had mentioned. Some of the other areas that I'd like to share is 199 jobs, training and apprenticeship opportunities. We also have a bursary programme helping people into further education, so 11 people in the region supported in the last financial year. 73 people participated in digital skills and cyber security workshops. You mentioned earlier about poverty and a digi aspect. Over 50 refurbished laptops we were able to gift to provide to individual schools and community groups through an initiative called TechShare that we've got, and that's laptops that staff have that are renewed every 3 years, so we get them reconditioned and back out to the community. In terms of education, I'm hearing in the room obviously any poverty is of course connected to the ability to access good education. So in terms of life opportunities, we've been able to support over 400 children and young people with various developmental initiatives and resources. So we've delivered to 230 children free monthly books through the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. And diverse skills programmes, including photography workshops, and that helped young people explore interests and develop talents. Lots of other greener communities initiatives around as well, and everything that the Wheatley Foundation does has a strand that links to poverty and tackling that as such. But just some high level observations that I thought it would be very remiss of me not to share with members this morning. Thank you.
No, thank you for that, Alex. That's really useful. And I'll come to Andrea and then Mark. We're kind of running out a bit of time, so just some quick reflections, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I mean, reflection from my own organisation and also working on the LEP is probably what we're seeing as this deepening in-work poverty, particularly across certain sectors in Dumfries and Galloway. And we recognise it at LEP level, but it's difficult to prioritise in-work poverty at the LEP just to compete in needs and priorities. So quite often we focus on the first stage about just getting somebody into work, but we're needing to look more about improving work quality, not just getting people into employment.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Andrea. And Mark?
Thank you. And I really just wanted to back up what Valerie was saying, because from a health perspective, nearly all the indicators that we measure are mirrored and influenced by socio-economic status. And I think we just have to be very aware that with the current global instabilities, we're going to be dealing with sort of a downward spiral in terms of costs of food and living that will feed directly back into the health of our population. So a clear and present thing to address in any way we can.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody, for those reflections. And I think it's clear, it's come out from them, you all. Yes, we've been working hard. The tail's been wagging the dog, so to speak. We've been trying and chasing to help those who really need it. But there needs to be a different answer. A lot of what's happening is out with our control. So we need to build resilience, but resilience in the communities, resilience with the third sector to be able to support people and be responsive when these problems hit. And that's something, just keep that in focus when we're talking about the priorities for the new strategy today, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to we'll hear from our colleagues in the Tackling Poverty Reference Group. And I think, Mark, you're going to give us a little bit of background as to who they are and what they are. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. So this morning, as I've said, we've got the 3 members of the Tackling Poverty Reference Group, which is a group that's ran for a number of years now, and it provides the input into the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, but it's a diverse group of people from across the region who are able to, I suppose, keep the work real around what we're doing and provide challenge. And this morning, Keith Drysdale, who's the new chair, just in the last few weeks, was appointed, taking on from the really good work that Jeanette Byers has done for the last 10 years as the chair. And Keith, as that group moves on, will lead that. So Keith just gets some reflections on behalf of the TPRG this morning.
Thank you very much. I promise I won't take very long. A lot of what I'm going to say probably will mirror some of the things that you've said, because there is a lot of good stuff going on. However, if you're involved at the sharp end with charities and facing up to the people who are in poverty, it doesn't feel any different than it did 5 years ago. And that's not just Dumfries and Galloway, that's Scotland, it's the UK. It's all flatlined, and it needs a new kick to take it further again. One of the things, if you take one thing out of this into the next bits of the breakout groups, this is probably the most important thing I'm going to say. Once people have been in poverty for a period of time, it becomes fatalistic. In other words, they can't see a way out. It's just, that's their life. That's what they believe. Until the day they die, they're going to be relying on food parcels. They're going to be relying on going and getting free clothes in the winter because somebody's donated it. And that's a dreadful thing in one of the G7 nations that we are saying that. What does it feel like in countries that are nowhere near as wealthy as us? And just to give a couple of examples, when we do the free winter clothes things, the number of times somebody comes up and asks how much something is and you say it's free, and they burst into tears, that's relief, because they didn't know how they were going to warm themselves up. We had one lady came and she had holes in both of her shoes so that the soles of her feet were touching the ground. And she took 5 pairs of shoes away, and she was so grateful. And you think, wow, that's quite powerful, just being able to give some of this stuff away. And probably the most shocking thing I've personally seen, recently I was waiting on a bus, and there was some chips lying that had been there for quite some time, very cold day. Gulls were coming and pecking at them. 5 minutes later, a guy came over, and I thought he was tidying up and going to put it in the bin. When I looked round as I got on the bus, he was eating the chips going round the corner. And you think, wow, that's really desperate when you get to that point. But that's reality for a number of people in our region. Biggest increase, I think, is in work poverty. And I don't think anybody's got a handle on it, because people probably feel too proud. I'm working. I shouldn't have to come and ask for some help. But that's reality. And a lot of that's driven, funnily enough, by inequalities. Mums can only work part-time because their priority, rightly, is their kids. So they're not earning enough to be anywhere near the median salaries, even though the median salary in Dumfries and Galloway will be a lot less than it is across the rest of Scotland and the rest of the UK. Housing. I speak to quite a number of the elected members who say they spend more time chasing up housing associations to repair things that need repaired. And that's on top of the fact that people can't afford to heat. So it's heat or eat. And that then leads to, and we've heard about the health effects, you get cold, it gets damp, you get mould spores, people are becoming ill because of all that sort of stuff, as well as, obviously, the mental health stuff. Private rental stuff was recognised as across the country. One of our members' mums was about to be evicted for no fault because the private owner decided he's going to get something better, he's going to be able to charge more from somebody else. And that's quite an unregulated process. It's a bigger process in Dumfries and Galloway. That's going to be, the UK is going to have to drive some of that. Transport, everybody wants the Edinburgh bus service in Dumfries and Galloway. So we're going to ask Elon Musk to give us several billion to try and do that for a year. But it is an enabler for all sorts of other things. It's a really important bus service for those particularly in the really rural areas, not so much for the towns. I sit on a few funding panels, some of which are council funding panels and also third sector. And there's one of the third sector ones I've sat on now for 3 years. 440,000, I think it was, available. The first year I sat on, 800,000 applied for. Last year, 440,000, 1.4 million. This year, 440,000, 2 million. the charities, when you read through everything that they're doing, it's absolutely inspiring. Some fantastic stuff getting done to work together to try and help people. But of the 120 charities that applied, 20 get money. So where's the rest of the money going to come to try and keep all those things going? And that's where the next point is around scepticism. There's a lot of scepticism from people. Good people I know won't give money towards charities that are doing stuff around poverty. Guess why? Because they know or they've seen people doing the wrong things. They're in at the food banks several times a week, not the once or twice that they were supposed to. Or it's been seen in certain charities, people coming out with the food banks and throwing stuff in the bin that they don't want, rather than actually saying, no, I won't eat that. Therefore, you put that into somebody else's parcel. They'll throw it in the bin. But if those people are sceptical, the gap between what can be funded through Scottish Government funds or whatever else needs to come from people putting it into collecting buckets or whatever. And they're not going to be like that if they're sceptics. The stuff you shared, Angela, and others have shared, it's fine, but keeping it amongst yourselves doesn't make a change. The sceptics don't know, and the people who are fatalistic about it don't know that there are success stories. We've got to be better at getting that, and that needs to be part of the strategy. How do we communicate out there all the good stuff that is going on, the success of somebody getting some education, getting a job, all that sort of stuff, because that's where we change people's attitudes as well as people's lives.
And their ambitions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Keith. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so very sobering thoughts there. Very sobering thoughts, and I'm quite sure the examples that Keith cites, they're not isolation. In fact, I know that. I know from my own involvement in third sector organisations, they're not in isolation. Okay, so moving on, in terms of how we're going to develop this new strategy, the timeline for that. So we've started development. We've had a clear phase process, beginning with the set-up of a multi-agency working group. And that helped agree the scope, the governance and the resources. And following your key input today, we'll move into a robust evidence gathering stage and engagement phase as well. And we'll do that throughout April to August. And that will help update the region's poverty profile as well. And then that will be followed by the strategy drafting around August to October, where the insights will be translated into those priorities and the action plans themselves. And then the process will conclude with the governance approval and the formal adoption late October to December, ready for enabling full implementation. And we will obviously keep yourselves as CPP fully involved and fully updated in that process at the key milestones as we go. But just a wee word on the strategic context of where we are. Of course, there's many other plans, as you even mentioned this morning in your earlier meeting. There's other plans, strategies, commitments amongst the strategic context in which we're working. And key commitments surround child poverty, inequality and diversity. And these will be fully incorporated into the new strategy. But also, all opportunities to strengthen our alignment across all of these strategies, we must explore them, because that's what keeps costs low, resources low, and action targeted. Okay. Our experience of delivering the previous strategy highlighted we must keep the emerging risks on our radar. And as we've said earlier this morning, not everything is within our control, but we can try to predict what is going to come and hit at us. And that means we need to remain agile. So here, what I've got here is a light touch AI provided horizon scan, and that took reference from the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report of 2025. And what that highlights is the following risks that could impact the people and the communities within our region. It drives up the cost of food, energy and everyday essentials, basic living. It deepens the cost of living pressures already felt across the region. It places that additional strain on household finances, and that makes it harder for families to stay secure. Our health systems come under greater pressure, and the vulnerable groups, they face reduced access to services. But together, ultimately, it creates a greater strain on the local services, the community support, and everyone trying to help the people who need it. And it makes many more households exposed to financial hardship and poor outcomes. Okay, so before we move into breakouts, I'm just going to provide you with an ambitious shared horizon. And what I ask you to do is, as we go into the breakouts, hold that vision in mind and what would need to change within Dumfries and Galloway to make it true. I will put that slide back up and leave it in the room if anyone needs to go back to it as we go to breakouts. Okay, so we'll now move to 3 consecutive breakout rooms. We've got one online and 2, one in the room, and there's another room also, yeah?
Yeah, for those who are going online, the group will be fully online, led by Scott, and then half the room will stay in here, and the other half will go to FO1, which is the first room up the stairs.
Okay. And you'll each, as I say, have your own dedicated facilitator, and it'll be 20 minutes for each of the 3 discussions. And I've asked the facilitators to keep you to time on that, to make sure we get some feedback across the 3 of them. And I think they have a plan to take you at different times, looking at different things. So the outcomes of each will inform the vision, the guiding principles of the new strategy. That would be the first one. The second discussion will be about how delivery should be enabled. And thirdly, we'll look at how its progress can be monitored. And the exam questions, we've provided them before in the pre-meeting material, just to get you all prepared and do some research. But your facilitator will help you guide you through these. But really, as a priority, if we can identify amongst us all 2 to 4-ish priority themes, the principles of how we work, the top enablers, the barriers, and some success measures that people will feel on the ground, so that Keith doesn't come to us in 5 years' time saying it feels no different. Okay, thank you. Okay, so do we want to just break out then? So 20 minutes each session. If we can be back in the room at 10 to 1, that would be useful. Thank you.
So I'm not sure if we know which group we're in.
Right, sorry. Yeah, that's critical, isn't it? So I think, what if we split halfway down the table? Okay. Well. Okay, we'll march on. So thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed those breakout sessions and come up with some rich content for us all. What we'll do, just given the time, because time's always precious, isn't it? So if we can take the three groups, each group just given one item of feedback on one of the exam questions each. It'll maybe just save us a wee bit of time, if that's okay. Maybe if I take the group who was up the stairs as group one, and happy for you to do feedback on question one, maybe?
We found that
quite
complex.
All right, okay, okay.
And your microphone as well, please. We have an online audience. Apologies. Yeah, we found it quite complex. This is obviously a really wicked issue here. We felt that there's probably some elements of the existing strategy that will need to be carried through. We felt in-work poverty is something that we've heard around the table has come up and is really important. We talked about actually like logic modelling as a good way to look at how we connect kind of activities and outcomes, because we recognise that over the next 5 years the kind of whole global situation means that things could continue to be extremely challenging, and we felt that there's needs to be an increased prominence across community planning partner boards about this strategy and the importance of tackling poverty and inequality going forward as well. So I don't know if there's anything else colleagues want to add in relation to what I've said, because I'm conscious of time.
No, that's great. Thank you very much for that. That's really useful. So that was number one. Number two was about enabling delivery, the exam question. Will I do that from the room here? Are you happy with that, people? Okay, so we set out about them from the strategic context, the national lobbying capability, make sure we have that route map to be able to do that. But we also spoke about resetting the partnerships landscape so that the strategy is a partnership in itself. And that was about knowing the touch points, using the insight, building the pathways for people to get out of poverty. And that wasn't just about the mitigation we've been doing, which has been so necessary, but we said, you know, we keep swimming against the tide. We need to not just build the mitigation, we need to build the adaptation as well. We need to help people come out of poverty. So the actions needed to enable that direction, and looking at also the integrated support for individuals, rather than individuals having, you know, lots of people helping them and not knowing where to start. Having that integrated support, a community hub of some sort, or individual or whatever mechanism that they can have an integrated support about them. Okay, that's me. Anything else I missed there, colleagues?
I mean, you missed all of that up there.
I missed all of that, sorry, yeah.
But for a summary, that's grand. But
Gosh, I need thicker
all
specs
this
for
will
that
be
one.
included, just to say,
It
so
will do.
all the notes, all the members will get that
Yes,
site,
they
but
are.
it's just to get a short summary, isn't it? So.
Yes, so can I come to the online group, please? Maybe for number 3, the exam question number 3.
Thank you. I'm happy to feedback for the online group. Hopefully I'll do as good a job as possible. The first piece of learning that I've taken is, if you are an online group, turn on the transcription, because that will take the notes for you, which would help being able to deliver with ease. But just some of the sort of high level things that our group were speaking about, is that we believe that as leaders we have a real strong action in terms of stamping out stigma, in terms of poverty, etc. And there's a way to go around that. We spoke a lot about, you know, community groups, that there's a lot of time and energy that's went in, and the low attendance around that. Whether that be through digital poverty or accessing food banks or just access to any services that has a strand of poverty attached to it, so too is a level of stigma, and I think that's something that our group thought should feature heavily across the next strategy. Accessibility to data. We spoke a lot about the use of data, of course, within that particular question. And having a single source of truth we thought was really important. We've all got lots and lots of data in different corners of our organisations, but making sure that we're drawn to a central place around that, and that it's as accurate as it possibly can be, which ties back to Keith's point around skeptics don't know you know, what all the good work that's being done, and that's because that information lies in various different cupboards, for want of a better way of putting it. So we thought that the single source of truth around data was really good, and we finally just kind of touched on the terminology quick wins. And thought that maybe we should reconsider how we view some of the terminology that's used. We had low-hanging fruit, we had quick wins, we had different things like that. But whilst quick wins are okay at the start of a strategy, I think we've got a real job to do around making sure that quick wins are overlaid with long-term sustainability and deliverability. So just some high level points, but Jennifer has huge amounts of notes around that can be fed back to group, but those were just some of the key hitters. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much for that, Alex. Okay, well, again, thank you all. I think we've got really rich insight there. How we translate that all into a strategy document, well, we've no idea yet, but that'll be the next steps, won't it, Mark? Yeah, so thank you. Okay, so in terms of the next steps, the engagement programme, we will combine focus groups, thematic discussions and community-based activity. Apparently that went down really well last time they developed a strategy. And we'll also support that with partner evidence, obviously staff expertise and the resource, hopefully from the organisations around the table, to help us with that. Work will move into the strategy drafting, as I said before, between August and October, and that will be followed by the governance, the approvals and the formal adoption for December 26. We will provide clear feedback loops to ensure that communities can see how their input directly shapes their decisions and strengthens the collaboration and shared ownership throughout the process. And I think we have another, do we have another CPP session planned, Mark? Or maybe an ambition that they'll let us come back?
I think that the hope is that through the engagement that the organisations would get involved in that through their team members that are on the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, and then the strategies will go through each of your own governance processes for ratification and support, and then come back to this meeting in December. I suppose you know, at that point, once it's went through, you know, the College Board, NHS Board, the Council, you know, TSDG's Board, etc. So there's an opportunity for each of the partners to scrutinise it, and then we'll work with Stephen around checking with the chairs around coming back as well.
Brilliant, thank you,
Mark.
Mark.
Progress report midway through.
Brilliant, thank you. So thank you everybody for your time and input. It's so essential, it's so critical for building this. Your commitment is going to shape this strategy, and we need it, and it will enable it to deliver real measurable change for the communities. As I say, we'll keep you updated at each milestone, and if you want to discuss any aspect at any time, if you go away today and think, oh, I just want to read something, please just get in touch with Mark or I, and we'll be happy to take any thoughts you've got. Okay, I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you. Gosh.
Well, thank you very much, Angela, for leading on that, and thanks to everybody who participated. Our group certainly had quite a lot of stuff captured today, and I'm sure those more familiar with digital methods will have captured from their groups, but I think just to reassure everybody that the feedback for the discussion groups will be collated for the minute. So, but quickly on to the recommendations. So we're asked to note the current Tackling Poverty and Inequality strategy, and note the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership has established a short-life multi-agency working group to design and coordinate development of the successor strategy. And then I suppose we're being asked today to endorse today's CPP strategic workshop to set the high-level direction and priorities for 2027 to 2031, which I feel we've done, if everybody's happy with that. And then confirm that engagement with people with lived experience of poverty will be central to the development process, and I think I would hope that we will all agree that and continue that, seeing as they're sitting here as well. So, and agree that the successor strategy will have greater integration with emerging national and local priorities, including child poverty and equality and diversity. If we're happy to agree that, and request that partner organisations, including third sector partners, confirm their ability to contribute financial and or in-kind resources to support strategy development and updated research. So can we agree to request that from partner organisations? Yeah. No harm in asking. And if we're content with that, that concludes the official business. But just for the purposes of today, I'm aware this is Liz Manson's last Community Planning Partnership Board meeting before she takes retirement. Liz has been the lead for community planning in our region going back many years and was pivotal in helping to develop our first local outcomes improvement plan. So her experience and reputation for positive and proactive work in the community planning space is respected at both local and national level, and has helped shape the future direction of community planning through her role in representing the sector on the Community Planning Improvement Board. So Liz, I think it would be great if we could all, I suppose, thank her on record for all the service she's provided to both the council and community planning, and that we wish her a very happy retirement. So thank you, Liz. No need for a round of applause there. And we're slightly behind schedule, but I think it's been very worthwhile in terms of the discussions we've been able to have. So with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.